Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about four things, but they are very closely interlinked. The Millennium Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, the youth, and then later on we'll also look at the question of the organizations. Now, for those that best remember, a couple of years ago, the United Nations rolled out the Millennium Development Goals, of course, to address and answer a question of human problems, human concerns. There were issues to do with the gender question, the girl-child question, the poverty question, the mobility question, and all those kind of things. There was a timeline tagged to it, after which the question was, then what? When the timeline reached, the context of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, bumped in. The key word that stood in the Sustainable Development Goals is not actually the development goals, but the sustainability part of it. Now, my question is going to be, how best does mankind actually understand these concepts of the Millennium Developments and then the Sustainable Developments? How best are they a party to it? How best are they contributing to the objectives of these development changes? A critic will come out and say, now, did we call it sustainable because we can't achieve it, because we can't realize it, because it's a dream? Is it actually the best name we could have given the development goals? Does it have the question of the target or the timeline and all those kind of things? Do we really have them? These are all issues that we keep piling, asking day and night. But then there is also the issue of the geography. Why are countries in some localities doing better? But then the bigger question is, are they actually living to the expectations of the SDGs? What line can we draw between Africa and the Western world? Are we having an equal share of the SDG cake? Are we having similar roles in the committee of the SDGs? Are we active? Are we bringing back and living by the examples? Do the last people in the communities understand that there is an SDG question out there? Do they even know that the life they are living is not what they deserve? They spend nights going to church, praying every day. But do we even know what we actually pray for? So I just want to try to lure this aspect to the young people. Behind me here, you can see a couple of men and women in blue or whatever that color is, not so good with colors. Then you can see a gentleman, of course, in red. May not be so clear, but the education logic, the trainings, how best are these trainings being given? How best is the education sector embracing these changes, these expectations, these long-term visions, missions, and making sure that they live to it? I have seen companies that have even gone as far as wearing the logos of the UN SDG programs. How is this reflecting to the lives of the employees, the companies that lay off workers, retrenchment systems, and all those likes in the multinational organizations? How best are these companies actually preparing these people? Or if at the end of the retrenchment, this person is going to roll back to zero, then there is a problem. There is a big problem. But for this particular show, I want to stage our conversation on the graduates, the young people in colleges, in high schools, at the universities. Well, let's look at the teachers. Let's look at the governments of those different countries. How best are these people being positioned? My clearest example that I always love to share is the bit of the COVID-19, which of course everybody watching this show is well aware of. When COVID-19 struck the world, most countries, several countries took up measures not limited to lockdowns, curfews, and all those kind of situations. This curfew was irrespective of whether they were haves or they were have-nots. It did not care about anyone. It did not care about the fact that some people are salary earners while others have to walk distances to go and get that food. How does that fit into the SDG phenomena? Then there were the bits of the virtual education systems that came up. I remember someday I was doing an assignment in college, and there was the question of the internet. There was the question of the penetration of the internet. There was the question of mobile computing. There's the question of technology, the evolution 1640 and all that. What stands undefined is the fact that societies are emerging differently, and yet rules are being set that everybody needs to follow. And then at the end of the day, as lawyers, we are told that, look, law is law. It doesn't care whether it is the pauper or whatever. It doesn't care who the poor is. It doesn't care. They will tell us that it is about saving the community. It's about saving mankind. Now, saving mankind from what? The poor man is not going to afford the medicine that is actually going to heal them. They will have to survive on the herbs. The big question is, how is the SDG model tailored to convert the local herbs used by these local people in the villages into something that can actually be used? Are they even being involved? So when students got into the changes within the education modules for the COVID-19 period that they needed to study online, I'll tell you one thing. Africa did not have a very positive bit into this. Of course, looking at the children in the urban centers, if these children in the urban centers were struggling to own smartphones, to own laptops, which I don't know, probably less than 30% of these kids can hold laptops in the schools. And they're all supposed to go on to Zooms, they're supposed to go on Teams, and yet the telcos are not reducing the charges of the data. Just let's think about this logically. Let's think about it. The agenda of driving change, is it actually participatory enough? Is it actually participatory, or is it remaining a conventional aspect? Thinking that it happened in France, it should happen in Ghana. It happened at the Silicon, it should happen in, Ethiopia. It happened in the UK, it should happen in Uganda. These are things that we really need to ask as we keep on pushing. I personally sit here driving change, running a virtual-based company, pushing these young people to change their mindsets, pushing institutions to say, guys, this is the way to go. In the back of my mind, I know that is the capitalism. I know it is the prospect that is going to change these people against their wishes. I have had times to fight with schools when they resist their students from going in for a virtual training. They tell them, no, we want them physically there. They are not wrong. They aren't wrong. The issue is, how best are these schools positioned to understand that this is the way to go? Of course, truth is, it is the right way to go. But how best are we prepared their minds as the players in this context? And then maybe the other question is, how best are we supporting these individuals who are trying to push the agenda of driving that fundamental change. So students come up, sit in class, listen to what they were told many years ago, and then when they leave this classroom, they're going to run out there looking for a job. And the job has no attachment with what they are spending years and fees sitting in class to study. Today, before I came for the show, I had an opportunity to interact with a couple of young people doing an online internship with Pineton. So what happened is, as we were having a conversation, everything seemed to these young people very much heart-touching. They felt it is really the world they want to be in. They felt everything is too new. As I kept listening to them, I'll tell you one thing. I saw a lot of potential in these young people. But the big question is, who is going to help these kids realize their potentials and stop sitting in class and listening to lectures, cramming all the work that they're being taught because they have to sit, write exams, and their end objective is to get a first class? The big question is, after their first class, then what? What does the SDG model have to do with brilliant students? We appreciate companies that have begun rolling out the aspects of the graduate internship programs. Of course, that means a lot. But at the end of it all, how many more companies can actually take these kids? How many more companies are looking into a model that's going to embrace these children? But then the other big question is, what about the teachers? What about the different ministries running and supporting the education system? How about them? How are we going to feel the vibe if we cannot change the actual source that is defining the destiny of these children? You know, it made me to realize something, that today, as we go onto the agenda of college and then we bump into school, there are two things that school has become. It has become an aspect of a prestige. Get a decent burial, he had a master's degree, he had a PhD. People used to call, they had all their jokes about PhD, permanent head damage, and all those kind of things. Of course, it is that level that you have learned almost everything. You know, a jack of all trades and a master of none. You remember that quotation? So the student spends his entire life in kindergarten, spends the life at the primary school. By the way, let me pause here and tell you something about the primary schools. I don't know, in the African context, we have the primary schools. After the nursery or the kindergarten, the child is taken onto the primary school for some good years there. Now, at the primary level, these students are equipped. They are taught how to read and write. They are taught how to think about calculations. They are taught how to, do everything, write the essays. And then what happens? Those teachers are going to be paid very little money. Then the ones at the higher levels who are already receiving these polished children are going to be given extra money because the assumption is that they had a university degree. But one thing that I share is, at one point when I was looking at the line between the college and then the primary education, there was one key thing that counted. Where else would I learn about nouns? Where else would I learn about salutations when writing my letters or sending out an email? Isn't it going to look back onto what I pursued then? Then why don't you simply make me begin to learn how to work after that level, and then I probably look at to the institutions or the universities as a point for me to improve or probably do what is called an upgrade. In some countries back in the days, a primary school teacher had only to finish a certain level and go on and begin to train to become a teacher. Few years later, they keep on upgrading into the universities and all those kind of things because they no longer contribute much apart from just giving you the paper that he's a degree holder. I'm proud of some companies that have tried to, stand out and say, look, we are not going to hire your papers anymore. We are going to hire who you are. My key point here is that if this person can speak English, can speak French, can speak all those other languages that are official enough, why don't you give them a chance if they can read and write? Why would somebody have to go and sell everything they have just because they have to go pay for a very expensive university education? University education, I am not trying to push you away. I am trying to say, are you tuning your people into a model that's going to help these people actually appreciate and build solutions, build industries, build companies? And if not, are companies crying to you that we need people who have studied from your institutions? That question will only come in the event that you have what they are looking out for. You are teaching these students the Scrum methodologies. You are teaching them the agile ways of working. You are teaching them the asterisk tools, and you are teaching them the new gens and all those kind of solutions. These kids live and they have no clue. Where is that addressed? The theoretics of the SDGs are very perfect, but how about the implementation of those modules? We are implementing poverty alleviation. We are implementing schools so that students learn how to speak English. We are distributing funds so that they all learn how to communicate. To communicate what? Will that put food on the table? You know, it's the key thing that we need to think about. As we struggle with these children, we struggle with these students every day to tell them, guys, this is what the world has. For how long will the world be a pillar of advise me what I should do? You know, it's a very, very dynamic point. Why are we having cases of mental problems? Why are we having cases of suicides if actually there's a sustainability model at hand? So what I call upon us is very simple. Let's work with the community. Let's implore means to get those resources and allocate them to the rural sectors. Let's embrace and support the different governments in a manner that, one, they are going to address the concepts of democratic principles, they are going to address concepts of participatory modules, and the people participating are the right people who deserve the support, who are actually in need. We are not looking for people who already have, and you're saying, yes, we consulted the communities. Who did you consult? You're consulting a man who has a house and ignoring the ones sleeping on the roadside. What kind of consultation is that? So all these things, if we think through and build them right, we are not going to have children striking because there is a virtual learning at hand. We're not going to have people fighting and saying, hey, there are no jobs. We are instead going to have a community where half of the population is creating jobs and half of the population is working. But as they are working, they are not worried of a retrenchment because the economy or the system has taught them that we are not going to have permanent jobs. We are going to have contracts, after which you have to be laid off to either go struggle and look for another job or go and invest that. You know, so it is something that I believe we need to revisit. We need to rethink. As we walk with our heads up, let's ask ourselves, whose lives are we impacted? It's not about the monies that we give them. It is about the information that we share with them. Once it is well shared, then they are going to ask us the right questions. What can I do now? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to me. Keep subscribing to the Tony Onying Show, and of course, brought to you by the pinetonconsults Africa, creating opportunities beyond boundaries. Thank you very much and have yourselves